Good afternoon. I'm glad to see you. Let's see who's here, and then we'll go from there. Anybody not on? Okay. Okay, everybody on? All right, thank you. So let's see what we have. Very interesting. Okay. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over the term project. make sure we all understand every part. And then Kristen's going to come up and share information about APA. I've been giving Kristen a hard time about this, and so she may be a little upset with me. But she's put in a lot of work, especially for those of you who've never worked with APA before. This will be good stuff for you. All right, let's take a look at every part of the term paper. Yamna did a very good job of introducing the paper to you, but we'll make sure that everyone has it down pat. The due date, April 21st. Not April 21st, that's the wrong one. You got a lot of time. You got lots. All right. November 22nd. 5 weeks. Something very important happened on November 22nd. Does anybody know? November 22nd, Friday, 1963, in Dallas, Texas.
The death of President John F. Kennedy.
The death of President John F. Kennedy. You looked it up?
Yes.
Yeah, he was assassinated in Dallas, Texas by Lee Harvey Oswald. Shot President Kennedy from the Texas Bookstore Depository from the 6th floor. I want each of you to do well on this paper. All of your TAs want you to do well. And you're not going to do well if you decide you're going to leave the last weekend for your paper. You're just not. Because it requires some pretty heavy thinking to do some of the sections. Some of the sections are easy. Intro, conclusion. Easy, easy. This paper really tests your ability to use the material that you've been learning and apply it to solving a real problem. Let's say you were an advisor. You were a consultant. And people came to you and they said, we have this problem. What do you recommend? How would we go about lessening this problem or eliminating it? That's what this paper asks you to do. Think about how you can actually use the material that you've been learning to help solve a real problem. If you've not even thought about what problem you might want to deal with, you should do so right away. And if you don't know how to do research online, it'll be hard for you. I'm thinking about possibly, and this would be purely voluntary, but giving you some bonus points if you do the section on defining the problem within a certain date. I'll give you some bonus points. You don't have to, but we'll just add these bonus points when we actually look at your paper, when you turn it in. Okay? And I'm thinking about doing this because I want all of you to do well on this paper, and you can't do well unless you actually start working on it right away, because it takes thought. You can't just come up with a good solution by just giving the last week to the paper. It takes some time. Yes?
If we do the defining the problem and we submit it to you, that doesn't have to be like a final, right?
No, it will be your best thinking at this particular point, but you're getting into the problem.
Okay.
That's what I want. I want everybody to start thinking about a problem that they select. And once you begin thinking about the problem, then thinking about possible solutions will come. But you have to start thinking first about the problem. Okay. You'll be given instructions on how to submit your paper. You'll submit your paper through Blackboard to Turnitin. Is everyone familiar with Turnitin? Anybody who's not familiar with Turnitin? Okay, very good. So you'll simply turn your paper in to Turnitin.com. You need not turn in the paper to your TA. Just turn it in to Turnitin.com, and your TA will then have access to the paper after it's been checked for plagiarism by Turnitin.com. All right? Okay. Eight to 10 double-space type pages, excluding the title, references, and appendix. 12-point font. Sans serif. No font with fancy stuff. Just plain font like that. Put page numbers in the upper center. 1-inch margin all around. Do not go over 10 pages. The paper is basically a problem solution paper. It requires original thought. Problem pool. Select one problem from the options here. Binge drinking and norms of blacking out. Texting while driving. Negative effects of technology. For example, negative effects of computers, smartphones, on attention, learning, and performance. Number 4, demeaning and occasionally physically dangerous initiation and hazing rituals, particularly of fraternities. But it can apply to other organizations also. Academic integrity and cheating. Just to see what you might be thinking about, and you don't have to be firm on this. How many of you are thinking about binge drinking? Okay, thank you. How many of you are thinking about texting while driving? Okay. How many? Negative effects of technology. Oh, more. Okay, thank you. Demeaning and occasionally physically dangerous initiation procedures. Okay. Academic integrity and cheating. Okay. And some of you haven't thought about it. Okay. All right. But it's spread pretty much across the 5 topics. All right, these are the headings for your paper. There are 6 headings: introduction, problem, the strategy from Cialdini that you're going to propose to solve the problem, then applying the strategy to actually solve the problem, evaluating the potential effectiveness of the strategy, including not only the strengths but possibly the weaknesses and obstacles in instituting the strategy, and finally, the final thoughts you'd like us to have. The introduction. Develop interest in your problem. Use an example, a scenario, a question, a quotation that will make the reader want to read your paper. Don't begin by how you typically begin your papers by saying, I'm going to write about such and such. Boring, 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 boring. Nobody wants to read papers that start like that. Think Cialdini. See how Cialdini gets people interested. He asks questions that you want to find an answer to. He gives you situations that cause you to want to read. Look at Cialdini to see how he captures attention. Once you've captured attention, tell us what you're going to do in the paper. Give us a short preview. The problem. Now, here's where you have to do research. Identify the problem that you're going to focus on first. Now, describe the nature of the problem. Let's say you take the problem of the difficulties that technology have on attention, performance, and learning. Describe the classroom situation in which it would apply. Describe specifically what kind of issues or problems technology use has in the classroom, the specific effects that it'll have on students in terms of, let's say, attention or learning or performance. To do that, you're going to have to go online. You're going to have to get information. Once you describe the nature of the problem, you're going to have to tell us, how serious is this? Is this a serious problem or not? How do you find out? You have to go online again. You have to find information that'll indicate that this might be a minor problem, it might be a average problem, or a pretty severe problem. Tell us, how big a problem is it? And then, how widespread is this problem? Is it restricted? Is it a USC problem? Is it a problem that applies to other universities? Is it a national problem? And again, to do this requires you're going online. The information for this section does not come from you. It comes from other sources, and so you have to be able to cite almost everything in this section, because none of it will come from you for the most part. Now, if you've had your own personal experience with it, you could put in your own personal experience, and that would not have to be cited. But the moment you start talking about the size and extent and seriousness and so on, that doesn't come from you. That comes from sources. Are we okay on that? So you have to be able to find sources related to the problem that you select. Any questions about the problem section? The third section, strategy to solve the problem. Select a strategy from Cialdini. Reciprocation, social proof, authority, scarcity, whatever, you decide. You decide. And if you feel that to solve the problem, it may require, let's say, a combination of two strategies, you can do that, but you're not required to do that at all. Just select one strategy. And one strategy may not be able to solve the problem. But using one strategy, you might be able to lessen the severity of the problem, perhaps. And that would be good. Just doing that. Okay. All right. So you're going to select a strategy, and then you're going to describe it. What do we mean by reciprocation if you're going to use reciprocation? How do you get people to get off online? You're going to give them something, or you're going to use some sort of gift or something like that. Exactly. What are you going to do? How does it work? You know, how does reciprocation work? So you describe the possible solution, and then present two studies. One straight from Cialdini. Take one of the research studies from Cialdini. Describe it. The study should show the effectiveness of the strategy in achieving some persuasive goal or end. And you'll cite that. You'll cite the text. And then one strategy that is not from Cialdini, that you have to find outside. And you'll describe the strategy, how it was used, and how it achieved the persuasive goal that it was designed to achieve. The purpose of this section is to simply describe the strategy and give examples of how the strategy was effective in producing certain kinds of effects. You have to be able to show that the strategy has been used before to achieve positive kinds of effects. That's what you'll do in that section. Section 4, applying the strategy. Yes, sir.
Going back,
Okay.
with a lot of the stuff we've learned, the conditions are super micro, like they're just person to person. If we cite something like that and show that they're there, is it still relevant to the problems we're talking about, which are obviously on a larger scale?
You'd have to make the case for it and say that the principle would still apply to a larger situation or a larger problem. Yeah, sure. Any other questions? That's good.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can find studies that don't necessarily relate to our topic and then make
Yeah,
apply.
good point. The study does not have to pertain to the topic you're talking about. Does not have to pertain to the topic. Simply a study that shows that the strategy was effective in producing a certain kind of effect. And what you're going to argue is that the strategy can be used to produce an effect on the problem that you're working on. But it does not have to be a study on technology, yeah, if that's your problem. That's a very good point. Yeah, you're free to quote or bring in any kind of study. Any kind of study. That was a good question. Okay. So then you're going to have to work out in your own mind what are the steps that would have to be followed to put this strategy into effect. What would you do first? What would you do second? What would you do third? And so on. And you lay it out for us. This is what employing this strategy would require. You will have to decide. And then some part of the steps that you will employ will require communication, messages of some kind. We want you to give us the messages. If you're going to send an incentive to your subjects to do something, what will this incentive say? If you're going to give a reward to people for doing something, how will you present that reward to them? Exactly how will you do it? So in the first part, you'll indicate, we're going to do this, this, and this. We're going to give them rewards for doing something. And then later, you'll say, in the section where we give them rewards, this is how we would actually do it. This is what the message would actually say. So that you're sort of giving us the macro steps and then giving us the details that fill in the steps. The material that you present in terms of, okay, we're going to have flyers that we're going to post on campus. This is what the flyers will say. That material you'll refer to in the text, saying, we will create flyers, and then you will say something like, see appendix, and that's where you'll put the actual flyer. Applying the strategy. Any questions about applying the strategy? Yes?
Is there any kind of limitation on the ways we can apply strategies? Like, is there a certain budget that we can make? Like, flyers are great, but we say, oh, plaster billboards are on Los Angeles. Like, is there parameters?
Yeah, very good point. And I actually address this in evaluation of the strategy in the next step. But they probably will both. Those sections will probably interact with one another and overlap. Yeah, I mean, economic considerations, for example, are important, right? Yeah. Or political considerations, whether you could get people to do what you want to have done. Those kinds of things are all part of the strategy. Okay. So we come to the fifth section, evaluation of strategy as a solution. You actually will have two parts here. The first part will talk about these are the reasons why this strategy is likely to be effective. And then the second part will basically say these are some obstacles that have to be overcome that might make it difficult for this solution to actually achieve its goal. Let's look specifically at some of the things you might consider. Discuss how effective your overall procedure is likely to be in solving or lessening the problem. In your evaluation, consider questions such as the one that you asked, such as how economically feasible is your proposal? How practical is it? How much time would be required to get reasonable results? If the proposal requires social, political, religious, or educational support to be effective, how likely will this support be attained? And these are some questions that you might consider. There are others that you would come up with. And then we're going to talk about problems. Discuss relevant economic, psychological, sociological, political, ethnic, educational factors that could limit the effectiveness of your proposal. In other words, what kind of problems will you run into? What kind of opposition is your strategy likely to encounter? And how serious is this opposition likely to be? Is this opposition likely to limit, to a great extent, the effectiveness of your solution, or is it an opposition that can be reasonably overcome? So we're looking for your own evaluation of the strengths and weaknesses of your proposal. And no proposal will be just totally strong. Every proposal will have weaknesses. Okay, for the evaluation section? Okay. And finally, the conclusion. Summarize your paper. Give us a judgment about your solution, how effective you think it'll be. And then, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? What's next? And you end with that. For some of you, this is probably the first time that you've gone through the assignment in detail. I hope that going through helps you in terms of making the sections clearer. As we look at the various sections that we've talked about, do you have any questions about what's required in each of the sections? Okay. Title page, you can see how it should be set up. Writing. Sections such as defining the problem, selecting a strategy, and showing how effective the strategy is will require research, citations. You'll need research to demonstrate that this is a problem. You'll need research to explain the strategy and to demonstrate that the strategy is an effective, persuasive tool. And then when it comes to applying the strategy and evaluating the strategy, those two sections may be much more creative, your own ideas, as opposed to simply taking things that have been done by other people. So it's a combination of having to cite and then showing creativity. Okay? Questions? Okay. Format. This is a minor point. But when you have a paper, never have a major heading as the last line on a paper. It really looks like a punk job. You'll never see a heading in a book that's the last line. You'll never see a heading that's the last line in a newspaper article or a magazine article. When you have a heading, there should be a few lines under it. Okay. So what does that mean? In the way you format your paper, if you come to a section and you have a heading, but you don't have enough room to put 2 or 3 lines of text, put the heading on the next page. Have it up on the top. Have that space on the bottom, blank. Rather than just having a heading as the very last line of the page. That looks awful. Citations. Kristen's going to talk about citations for you. References, she's going to talk about references for you. But these are examples. Copy to turnitin.com. get your paper in before class starts on November 22nd. Notice, late papers will not be graded. You have 5 weeks to do the paper. Do not tell us that you didn't have enough time. For you to get a grade in the class, we have to have a reaction or a report from turnitin.com. If we don't get a report from turnitin.com, that means we can't look at your paper and you will receive an incomplete. Everybody understand that? Okay. Plagiarism. Students sometimes misunderstand what it means to be creative. Some students think to be creative, you have to show large sections that have no citations, that it's you. If you read an academic book, you'll see that there are citations all the way through. Piles of citations. The creativity comes in the inferences you make, the conclusions you draw, the connections that you draw. That's where your creativity comes in. Practically everything you write, let's say at least in the problem and the strategy sections, practically everything you write, you cite. Comes from somebody. Doesn't come from you. Doesn't come from you. So the idea of citing, showing a lack of creativity, that's a false idea. That's a false idea. Good academic papers actually oversight. They oversight. The moment someone might say, where'd you get that idea? How do you know that? Cite it. Cite it. Your creativity comes from your original ideas, and they don't have to be long paragraphs or anything like that. Okay? So creativity doesn't mean that 60% of the paper has to be uncited. And so people who have that idea will take material from other people, try to rephrase it in some way, and pass it off as their own. Don't do that. That's not necessary. It's not necessary. If you get ideas from someone, cite it. The judgments that you make, the conclusions that you make, that'll show your original thinking. How you organize the material shows your thinking. But you don't have to try to see if you can take ideas from other people and pass it off as your own. You don't have to do that at all. Having lots of citations is actually good. Okay. See how the points are distributed, where the heavy points are going. The problem and strategy sections, 20 points, 40 points right there. These are the two sections that require research. The sections that are primarily you, 15 points, 15 points. Regarding writing, 10 points for clarity, precision, and coherence. I found it interesting in that people who don't do a lot of writing, or who have not done a lot of writing, or who have not had their writing critiqued, tend to think that they are pretty good writers. They overestimate how good they are. Good writing is not innate. It's a learned skill. It's a learned skill. You learn to be a good writer by writing and having a good critic rip it apart. That's how you learn to be a good writer. Clarity, precision, coherence, things hanging together. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, proper APA usage. Writing, 20 points total. 80 points content. 20 points writing. It's interesting how some students don't like to be graded or have their writing graded. They say, don't grade my writing, grade my content, grade my ideas. Well, the response to that is, the only way I can get your ideas is through your writing. And if your writing is confusing or incoherent, I can't really grapple with your ideas. So your ideas and how you write are interrelated. Your writing can enable your ideas to be brought out clearly and powerfully. If your writing is weak, your ideas will not come through. Every time you find material that does not come from your head, cite it. Lecture, textbook, journal article, whatever, cite it. It is better to oversight. Okay. By way of review again, how many of you will be working with APA for the first time on this paper? Okay, not too many, not too many. Most of you have used APA before. Okay, this will be an excellent review for you. Okay, and so Kristen will come up and she will now get into APA.
Just make a computer up.
Okay, let's set it up.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is it that right there? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
There you is.
Ah,
There you are.
wonderful. Thanks.
Okay.
Do I just have to hold this somewhere?
Yes.
Because I talk with my hands a lot, so
Yes, of course.
should I like pin it right here?
No, you can do it like this. Okay.
Oh, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
And then,
I'll just. I don't know. I have a
I don't
pocket.
know.
I have a pocket.
yeah. Oh,
I love
okay.
pockets.
Okay. All right.
Great.
You're welcome. Would you like the?
Ooh.
Do you want this?
Point. Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
There's a few things I need to point out.
Okay, but let me see. I'll put this in here.
Okay.
And there you go.
Wonderful.
And then you can use this.
Perfect.
Okay.
Oh, so this will match up with.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh. Okay. Well, I guess reiterating the title would be a bit redundant since we've been just pounding it into your heads that citing an APA and using this style and format is extremely important. And it's extremely important for many reasons. And I know that a lot of you right now seem a little bit tired, a little bit down, maybe a little distracted. Well, I am going to encourage you all to pay close attention so that I can give you a guide and help you get a better grade. Okay? So an overview of what I'll be discussing is first and foremost why we should care, why you should care as you are doing your term paper, and how it will benefit you if you are using APA correctly. Additionally, I'll go over some APA formatting specifics and the style, and I'll provide a few examples along with this overview. And finally, I will provide an introduction into the supplemental source I'm creating that will be more like a tutorial and reference point you can use when you have questions. Okay? So first, why should we care? Okay, number one, it affects your grade. And it's not that the TAs and Ken are looking for ways to cut points. Actually, it's the opposite. It is so much better for us and our experience grading if we can understand what you're writing, and also if you are doing what we ask of you in APA. They're easy points. It takes time and attention to identify what you need to cite and how you need to cite it, but if you do it correctly, that's automatic points. So if you miss points because you don't do APA, shame on you. Second is future use. If you are interested in going to graduate school, if you have other courses, which all of you do, so this is applying to all of you, if you plan on doing research or any type of publication in the future, APA is going to be used. It's so widely used in all of the social science disciplines. And so learning these tools now will benefit you for the future. I wish in undergrad that I had taken the time and that I had people who wanted to pound this into my brain, because now it's what I depend on to do work. Finally, if you use APA correctly, you will eliminate any reason for Ken or the TAs to think that you may have plagiarized. We, once again, do not want to make this assumption at all. But we also are encouraging you to pay close attention to APA so that you don't make this mistake, okay? Because it would be very unfortunate if you were citing someone's ideas to support your claim, but you didn't know how to cite someone's, or you didn't think that it was super relevant and you left it out, and then we have to have large discussions about whether it was your idea or not and whether you plagiarized. Let's just eliminate all of that together. So let's conclude that we care about APA and that you're going to invest time into learning about it so you can get a better grade on your exam and benefit your future. All right, what's APA? APA it stands for the Association of Psychological... Oh no, I just totally messed this up. Ken, you gotta help me out. What's the association's name? It's Association of Psychological Association. American, thank you so much. Someone is looking this up. American Psychological Association. See, all of these acronyms I still struggle with at times. And it is a common ground, a common language that is used throughout academic research. And it's this common language that enables us to reproduce research, to identify where sources are coming from, and as educators, for us to know what students are using when they are building their arguments and supporting their claims. Okay? And referencing in general is not supposed to be just something we do that's frivolous. It is a part of the learning and academic process because you are acknowledging where you got this information. You are also giving credit to whose ideas that you are agreeing with or supporting. You're also providing evidence when you reference. You provide evidence when you're able to cite someone who has, in this case for the term paper, conducted a study that relates to your strategy. Okay, so referencing is very important and is central to the entire writing process. Basic formatting. I actually just added this because I heard Ken mentioning some of the basics. In APA, you always double space, 12-point font, Times New Roman. In this case, we are asking for sans serif. And also page numbers and headings. In the supplemental source that I'm providing for you all, I will have an example of what a heading is, which is typically an abbreviated title that you then include on the top of your paper. So these are some of the nitty-gritty details that are used in your entire formatting, in your formatting of your paper. And once again, I will provide examples and more details in that supplemental source I will upload on Blackboard. Okay, I wanted to create an overview of how you encounter types of referencing and what types of questions you should ask when you're thinking about what type of citation should I use in text or in a reference. You'll come to find that in many cases, if the idea or the claim or the finding is not yours, you cite it, okay? So this is just kind of a mind map, right? If you start with something, okay? So if you are writing anything, you can already ask the question, is it a direct quote? Did you paraphrase this information? Or, once again, that big question, is this someone else's idea? Is it a finding? Is it data? Or is it an argument? If so, you're citing all of that. Yes, my friends, all of it. Granted, we believe you are very smart and capable people, and we know that you have your own ideas. However, when you make your own ideas known and your claims known, having these citations supports our understanding and our belief in your claim, okay? Okay, so yeah, just in general, we can always count on Beyonce and the meme culture to come up with some form of a rule for us. If you use it, then you put a citation on it, okay, folks? And if you have any questions about that scope, then refer to the supplemental source that I'm using or ask your TA if it's a very specific question. Basic elements of a reference. Ken has reviewed this, and actually we talked about it last class, but the basic elements you all need to pay attention to, especially when you're getting information online. So in that problem section of the term paper, you have to present a scenario or an example about why this problem exists and why it's important, okay? So in this instance, you may be citing a news article or a web page or a tweet in which someone says something and then it blew up into a larger phenomenon. And when you're doing that, it's very, very hard to know what type of information needs to be included. But if you stick to the basic elements, that provides you a very good guide. Okay, so we have the author, content creator. In some cases, this is an organization. You have the date of the publication, very important. You also have the title of the item. Now this one can get a little tricky, and once again, I will provide more details in that supplemental source. And finally, the publication information. Once again, when you're getting information online, this is extremely, extremely important. If there's a permalink, instead of a URL, you use the permalink. We are going to go over one example in which you would need to cite an online journal article, which may be, I think, the most common source that you will be using for studies that you need to use in the supporting your claim section. Okay, here's an example. This is actually a reference that I use in research I conduct. Borgatti, SP, Cross R. We have the authors. This is tried to make this simple. 2003, the date, it's in a grayish color. The title of the journal article, once again, this is a journal article found online and conducts a study. and the study has findings that I could use to support my claims. I make sure I have the title. I then put the journal title, the publication's name, in italics after the title. And then finally, this one actually, sometimes I feel like undergrads don't really know what this is, or they're not familiar. But when it comes to online, offline, just all publications in academia typically have issues and volumes, okay? So here we have an example in which this is volume 49 and issue 4. Okay, and volumes can go through years, they could be through seasons, but pay attention to this because that's a part of the citation. And finally, we have the page numbers. Yes, I know, it gets really, really detailed, but this is also important, the page numbers, because in a journal, there are multiple articles. And this page number denotes that this is where this specific article is. So if the TAs have a question about your study, having this information makes it so much easier for us to look at the types of sources you were using. Without it, it's really hard for us to identify what you were using and try to understand your position. Okay, coming soon, and that is the supplemental source that I've been working on and I really think will be a benefit to you all. It's something I wish I had as an undergrad. And this will be something that you can reference, and I'm hoping that it will answer some of the questions and save you time and effort having to go through so many sites and referencing and blogs to figure out those common troubleshooting types of issues that we experience when conducting research. Okay, so the specific topics that are included in this supplemental source that I've been working on is, one is example of in-text citations and different sources. So I focus on what types of sources you will be using in your paper that we have at least required of you. So those are academic journal articles, books, as well as online newspapers, for example. And then I provide ways in which you would cite those in text if you are quoting something, if you are paraphrasing something, or if you're using it to support your argument, okay? And then I talk about evaluating different sources and how you can distinguish between what's a popular source and what's a scholarly source, and what's a primary source and what's a secondary source, okay? Finally, we have sources for each term paper. One more thing I wanted to include, and I hope it's helpful, is going through each part of the term paper and thinking about what types of sources, what characteristics of those sources should be a part of what I use. Okay? Let me say that a little bit more clearly. I take each section of the term paper, I look at what it asks, what types of sources it requires, and provide some examples and recommendations as to where you can get those sources and what types of sources you should use. Okay? And additionally, this is also very important, especially if you continue research in academia, and that is reference management systems. It can improve your accuracy when it comes to citing things, and it automates the entire process. Also, you can integrate these things across platforms. So they're very, very helpful, and I will provide some links to sources that you can use. Finally, lists of links. I will provide example journals that are relevant to the problems that we have proposed. You don't have to use them, but they are just a way to consolidate your search. And finally, I know a few of you were interested in citing and using survey results and data found at Gallup or Pew Research. I found some survey reports that are related to problems. I have all of that information, once again, included in this supplemental source. So now that I have provided you with an overview of what APA is, why it's important, and how this supplemental source can hopefully be of assistance to you as you are conducting your research and writing your paper, I will now gladly take questions. And also, I'm open to recommendations if you feel like there is a specific troubleshooting problem, or there's a specific question you have that you want to be answered in that supplemental source, please let me know now or later. Any questions? Yeah.
I just heard in another class that like I think one version of the APA doesn't require you to use the page numbers unless you're like quoting directly, like you're actually using direct lines, like words from the text. But do you want us to include the page numbers no matter what? Is that
That's a great question. So there's two types of citations, right? You have a citation that's in text, and then you have a citation that is in the reference list. So it's really a reference and a citation. So on the reference list, on the example that I showed of the journal article, in this case, whether you use quotations or not, the page numbers of the journal article has to be included in the reference. But if you were to cite this piece in your paper, you don't have to cite what page number it's on if you're not quoting. But of course, if you want to provide more information, go for it. Yeah.
I thought I also recently read that if it's an online journal, you don't have to put the page number.
That's also a good question. And one that I hope my supplemental source will address, because there are many cases in which you come across different types of sources and they don't have one of those basic elements. What do you do? If there isn't a date, you put in D. If there isn't a page number and it's an online source, well, that's why I'm trying to find that's why the DOI, the Direct Object Identifier System, like that's what it's for. So if there isn't a page number for an online journal article, that's okay. If you're providing the DOI, which it will have a DOI if it's an online source, or the URL, then you're in good shape. Any other questions? Yes?
What's your preference if you are citing a long section describing something from a research study? Do you cite the authors like up above or on the bottom? Any preferences about where you do that?
Are you talking about paraphrasing or direct quotes?
Not the direct quote.
Not direct quotes. So if this study, for example, is going to be the crux of your strategy, okay, if it's like the main thing, then you definitely want to use the author's name, at least in my opinion. Use the author's names so that in the beginning, like say, Cross and Borgatti, in parentheses, 2003, found, and they did this and this and this, instead of just saying everything they did and then putting their names at the bottom. So if it's something that you are using and it's really important, I think actually all of the required studies that need to be in your term paper are going to be things that you talk a lot about. So be careful that you don't just talk about the study and use up a lot of space and then have the author and date, at the bottom. Weave it in. Yeah?
in that example that was just given, would you use quotation marks?
If you are paraphrasing, you don't need quotation marks. But if it's a direct quote, word for word, then you need to use quotations. However, there are issues with paraphrasing and plagiarism because, just basically changing a few words, finding a few synonyms to replace, words in a quote is not paraphrasing. That is not, synthesizing what the ideas were. That is basically plagiarism. And in many cases, punishable. So I would stay away from paraphrasing in ways that make you feel uncomfortable. Okay, so that, once again, just two examples, just finding synonyms to replace certain words or just trying to rearrange a sentence. If you're just trying to rearrange a sentence, then you should go back to the main source and really think about what idea you are trying to convey, okay? That will, keep that type of rule will keep you far away and, safe from any forms of plagiarism. Yeah.
In both cases, wouldn't you have to cite
You cite both anyway. You cite paraphrasing. She was asking about quotations.
Like, so if you paraphrase incorrectly, but in both cases you incite, it's still plagiarism?
No, okay. So paraphrasing is a common thing that we do to describe something, someone's ideas, someone's findings, right? There's a difference between paraphrasing and then just trying to use someone else's words but make it seem like they're yours. Does that make sense? So you can do that. You can use someone else's words and make it seem like it's yours by not citing, or by taking their direct words and kind of just, rearranging just a little bit. Yeah.
Is there any way for us to check if we've cited enough?
Pardon?
Is there any way for us to check if we've done enough in terms of citation?
Yes.
Because sometimes I might think that I've done enough, but I actually might not have. So
I come across this all the time, especially in academics. I mean, we will cite 5 different sources after one sentence because, you make a claim. So if you think that's the case, first and foremost, you are already more self-aware and paying, more attention than I think what is completely necessary to do a really good job. But I admire that, and I think that's a great practice. So it's important to constantly be aware and making sure that everything is cited that is not yours, okay? But when it comes to making sure, because you're scared, because you're not sure if it's going to come up and turn it in, there are systems online that you can actually upload your paper and see the percentage of match. And that then would give you an idea of what we're going to see on the Turnitin. So I will also, that's a great thing to add to the supplemental source. I'll add that and make sure that you have an opportunity to upload your page. I mean, I've had cases in which students did not mean to plagiarize at all, and Turnitin had it at like 85%. But they were careless. So they didn't try, but to us it's really hard to tell because they were using the words found in a newspaper about. So the rule of thumb is to be careful and self-aware, like you mentioned, but also use sources if you're concerned. Any other questions? All right, well, if you do have questions or you have recommendations for anything you want to see included in the supplemental source, I'm hoping to upload that to Blackboard by Monday or Tuesday, then please email me. My email is on our Blackboard site. Thank you. Are we done? Yeah.
I was like 5 minutes late to class and I didn't
Yeah.
get the 4-digit code. Do you know what that is?
Okay, just email me, because this happens sometimes, so email me and I will make sure that your attendance is recorded.
Okay, perfect. And then also for the midterm stuff, when will you get to tell us like if it's all?
I'm actually waiting for a response from, I've done it personally, but I'm waiting on a response from TAs and Ken. So I have
No
to
worries,
get it
just-
approved, and then I will email you. I know you guys are waiting you're waiting.
No worries. Okay, thank you.
Hey, I know, I'm so sorry.
No worries.
I was out of town because my gram was in the hospital. I've just been like
don't worry
a
about it.
mess, but if you want to meet after this, we can.
Yeah, okay, let's do that.
Yeah, because I had to do this today.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
I emailed you twice.
Okay. Cats. Right? What's your name?
Sophie.
Sophie. Yes, I remember. Okay, I have your paper. Actually, let me make sure. I may have your paper with me today.
It's not about paper.
It's not your. No, I mean your exam.
Oh no, it's not about that.
Oh, it's not about the exam. Okay, never mind. Sorry. What are
I
you
was
gonna
sick.
ask?
I have mono, so I wasn't here last class. So I
Okay.
was wondering if I can get the filled-in notes and then also excuse absence for that class.
Yes. Yes.
I emailed you
Email
once, and
you.
then I forwarded you
Okay,
again.
perfect. That's all you need to do. I've been on so overload that I'm just running, but I will.